Recently I've been playing a lot of slide, specifically on my resonator, and I do that anytime I'm feeling kind of burned out or in a rut in my playing. Slide and slide blues really helps to pull me out personally of a rut and kind of reignite my passion for playing guitar. But most of my time spent on slide has been in open E. That's what I learned in, that's what I was the most comfortable in. I've made several videos about open E tuning and slide guitar. But a couple of weeks ago, I wanted to kind of change things up, so I switched over to open G. And I think that open G is one of the most versatile and useful tunings for guitar in general, period. It's not just for old slide blues stuff from the 30s and 40s. Today we're gonna talk about that, open G tuning. Okay, so let's start off by getting tuned up from standard tuning to open G. It's really simple. You're just gonna tune 3 strings down from standard tuning to get to open G, starting with your low E string. Your 6th string is gonna go from E down a whole step to D. Your 5th string A is gonna go down a whole step to G. Your 4th string D is gonna stay the same. 3rd string G is gonna stay the same. 2nd string B is gonna stay the same. And our 1st string is gonna go from E down to D. So when you're done, you should sound like this. And the reason we call this open G is because we have a G major triad whenever we strum our open strings from the 5th string down. And if we strum all 6 strings together, we end up with a G second inversion where we have the 5th and the bass D. Now in the description box down below, I've put together a PDF download to go with this episode. So if you're new to this, you can download that and follow along at home. I highly recommend it. It's free and it's down in the description box below. Now the cool thing about open tunings like open G is that you really only need to know a few basic things to get up and rolling and playing something that's really musical. Starting with a basic 1-4-5 blues progression. Now, if you're gonna play a G blues in open G, it's really simple. Our 1 chord is G major, and like we just said, that's just the open strings. Now the 4 chord in the key of G is C major, and we play a C major by barring 5 strings from the 5th fret. Now we get there because our root C is on the 5th string. You can also play with a slide. And then the 5 chord in the key of G is going to be D major, which is just a whole step up from C. Because the guitar is tuned to an open tuning, as long as you bar anywhere on the fretboard, you're going to get a major triad based off of whatever root note that is. Now the next thing that I like to understand anytime I'm working in a new tuning is where my scales are, where my intervals are, because this is how we're going to start to build melody ideas and learn how to improvise and solo and just play musically in this tuning. So first thing we're going to do is G major, the G major scale based off of the 5th string G root, and it goes like this. There's 1 octave, here's my 2nd octave. Pretty simple. And what's cool about open G is you can start to string these notes together while you're strumming because we're in the key, we're playing diatonically, and you instantly start to get something that sounds melodic and musical. Now let's start with our minor pentatonic, which is incredibly easy in open G because it's super close to the minor pentatonic scale shape that you already know in standard. It's going to happen between the 3rd and 5th fret cell here on the neck, just like the minor pentatonic in standard tuning works, but it's going to sound like this. And whenever you throw the slide into the equation, that's where you start to get into this blues territory. I genuinely love this tuning so much. It's become probably my favorite tuning to play in recently. Now what's really interesting to me is how influential this tuning has been over the years. Kind of started with the early bluesmen that were using it on dobro and acoustic guitar and playing these 12-bar blues standards and putting them on records in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And there's a direct line of influence between those artists and the records that they made and the early British rock bands, the Stones, for example. And it's not just the Stones. You look at Zeppelin, Jimmy Page, and how much it's utilized in their music, and on to even more modern bands like Coldplay, for example. Open G is all over the place. Now, if you're like me, anytime you're trying to learn something new on guitar, you're trying to get it under your fingers, the best way to do it is learn a song. Learn a handful of songs. But specifically for Open G, I think one of the best songs to start with is Walkin' Blues by Robert Johnson. So, in and around London in the late 50s and early 60s, you had guys like Keith Richards listening to songs like that by Robert Johnson and Muddy Waters, these American bluesmen that were taking this sound that was birthed in the American South, and they took that American Delta blues sound that had been kind of passed over in the States, and they fell in love with it, and they took that sound and this tuning and did things like... Now that is an incredibly familiar sound that Keith Richards helped make popular, and it's really simple. You just bar and make a major chord, and then you're gonna essentially make it a suspended voicing with your second and third finger here, making what is in standard tuning like a minor 7 chord shape. And then that's just like a straight ahead 12-bar blues shuffle that we all learn when we first pick up guitar. Because you're barring on the 5th and 4th string right here, you're making what's essentially a power chord. And you're raising that 5th up a whole tone to the 6th, and you're getting that. And then also later in the 60s, you had another British band take that Delta blues sound and do something like this. I mean, you can directly see the lineage between that and... I love this stuff. It's so cool to me. And then after the British bring it back to the States, in around 1990, a band from my home state of Georgia takes that same kind of sound and does... sort of melding the two things, right? You have the traditional open G blues, you know, flat third to 4 kind of voicing. And then also that Keith Richards suspension. And this sound and tuning remain popular, and bands like Pearl Jam pick it up and do this. Now, one thing that I've sort of found and thought for a while about Open G is it's kind of pigeonholed as one of those handful of sounds that I just played, but it's actually capable of way more than that. It's capable of really modern sounds too, if you know how to use it. So I think this is why Open G is probably one of the most, if not the most underrated guitar tunings of all time, and it's because so many of us guitar players just think of Open G as that sort of old school blues kind of sound, but it's capable of so much more than that. So because we're in an open triad tuning with a fifth in the bass, it allows us to put together some really, really interesting chord voicings that we might not think of doing or might not be able to do in standard tuning. Now, in my mind, the best way to learn this is just to experiment. Throw your guitar in Open G and start playing around with different chord voicings and intervals and see what you can come up with. But there's a few concepts that I'll give you to kind of help you get started. So the first thing is knowing how to play the harmonized major scale all the way up and down the neck based off of the fifth string root, just using like an open 10th voicing, for example, kind of like a piano voicing. You hear this all the time in pop music nowadays. A lot of pop guitar parts are played with these kind of chords. And I talked about this in my Nashville Number System course quite a bit, which is available down below. Shameless plug. So essentially all we're going to do is play up the G major harmonized scale like this. Now, if you're just starting out with this, the first thing to learn is where the root notes of each chord are. Basically, you're going to play up a G major scale off of the fifth string. And then you want to stack that chord's major or minor third on top of the root. Now, we're going to play the major third or the minor third an octave up from the root, so that's actually going to be the 10th scale degree, which is why I referred to these as a 10th voicing earlier. And that's just going to sound like this. Now, just by using that, you can start to play simple chord progressions in the key of G, diatonic chord progressions with just those shapes. And again, because we're tuned to an open chord, you can let the extra strings ring out for some really nice, like add 9 voicings and suspended voicings. And then you can start to stack intervals on top of it. Start rooting around based off of different chord root notes to try and find what intervals sound good. That's how I came up with the part that I was playing at the beginning of the piece. This first chord I'm playing is just a G major, but I'm adding the fourth right here with that 10th on top with the extra strings ringing out, and you get this really nice kind of spread voicing. It sounds almost like a piano chord. Beautiful. And then I'm taking that shape and I'm just sliding it down to D. You can hit the low D in there. And then I just took that shape and slid it up to E flat, and I raised to a sharp 4 to get kind of like an E flat Lydian sort of sound. Really nice chord. And then the other thing to think about is how to incorporate the bottom string, the low D string, into your chord voicings like this. So right there, this is a C major, add 9 kind of sound right here. And then I'm adding the F on top. So you're getting sort of like a inverted C major sound. Slide that up to D. Then up to E minor. And you can see with just a little bit of experimentation and trying out different root notes and intervals, you can build these really beautiful sounding chords and guitar parts that you might not think of doing in standard tuning. So there you go, that's Open G tuning. I hope you found this video useful. I really want to start doing more teaching videos like this here on the channel in 2021. I had a lot of fun making it. If you're interested, I have a few video courses available for download in the description box below, as well as Helix presets, Kemper Profiles, as well as some Quad Cortex profiles on the way. Not yet, but they will be available soon. You can check that out down below. You can check out my website and sign up for my mailing list down there to keep up to date on when I've got new products and courses coming out as well.
well. As always, I really appreciate the support you guys show. Please subscribe here to my YouTube channel. You can also follow me on Instagram at Rhett Shull, and check out my second channel, Rhett Shull Studio, which is linked down below. I may actually do a video on how I was recording the resonator today, because I'm actually really happy with the sounds I got. Anyways, let me know down in the comments section what you want to see next in this teaching series, and I will see you guys on the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, there is no plan B.